This is the Epilogue Audio Experience.
Hey guys, welcome to Sculpted, a design podcast where some of the leading designers around the world come together to unveil design layer by layer. I'm your host Siddhant, and I'm here to do some deep digging into design thinking with some super cool speakers. Today's topic is one which will be every designer's favorite, and that is logo designing and branding. So if you want to know what it takes to be a good logo designer and what ingredients you would need to create an iconic logo for your brand, this episode is for you. And to join me in this conversation, we have Jeremy Mura as our guest. He is a logo and branding identity expert, has a very successful YouTube channel and Instagram page where he shares some really helpful tips on designing. He has worked for brand names such as American Express, Telstra, and Macquarie Business School. He also has some really interesting courses on Skillshare and has guided over 45,000 plus students. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Welcome to Sculpted, Jeremy. Finally, we are having a conversation on our favorite topic. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hey Sid, it's good to have you and good to see you, man. I know it's finally been a while. We've always been hitting it off on Instagram, but now it's good to have a join in on a conversation, and happy to be on Sculpted, man. Super excited.
Oh yes, yeah, finally having a conversation. So, Jeremy, my very first question will be like, how has been your journey as a designer? Like, did you plan to be one from the very start?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. For me, I've always been into creativity. My mum was sort of creative. My dad was into IT. He was a project manager. So I've always been into computers and gaming and creativity. I used to do like sketching, draw like little stick figures when I was in school, and stuff, which is fun. But yeah, I had one class and it was called multimedia in my high school.
Okay.
And we actually got to use Photoshop and also 3D Max. So I got plugged into doing 3D stuff and playing around with Photoshop, and that sort of led me to be like, oh, I want to be a designer. But at the time, I didn't know like what a graphic designer really was. Like I just wanted to do like animation or like creating games or something like creative like that. But then I figured out like, yeah, you can do graphic design. And I decided when I was in high school, I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. I love creating designs and just being creative and fun.
Okay, so as you said, like you like that's how the every designer journey is. Like they explore stuff and then they hook up to someone expertise. So how did you find out in your journey that you want to be an expert in logo designing and branding, considering you were exploring so many things, as you said, designing, animation and stuff?
Yeah, like it's like a natural progression over time. Like so after high school, I went to college and I did a few years at SAE, also known as Quantum College, right? And I did a bachelor in graphic design. So it was 2 years fast tracked. And my teacher at the time taught us like how to do logos and like how to do brand identities. And I feel like doing logos and brand identities are the core foundations of a graphic designer, because every company and business needs an identity.
Yes.
And they need a symbol. They need that visual representation of their image. Without that, like you don't really have much to connect with an audience and to the world, right? So I figured out like that's the core foundations. You can actually generate income and money from it, because most design agencies have branding, right? Like every brand agency has that. So I made up my mind like, yeah, I wanted to stick with that. And I just always loved like creating logos and just, I loved using Illustrator, and you basically do brand identity stuff in Illustrator. So I just decided to stick with that. Obviously, like I like illustration, I like packaging. I've done that when I worked in internships and stuff in like 2016.
Okay.
Got to do all that cool stuff. But yeah, I feel like it was just a natural progression, and I just started to stick with it because I saw the value in it, and I saw that it can actually make it a profitable business.
Right. Yeah. Of course, logo designing is, according to me, as in the highest paying projects if you can have as a designer, because you can charge really high.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So when you said that you were really into sketching too, so do you believe that every designer needs to be good at traditional sketching, as in with pencil and papers, or it's good to go if you don't know sketching at all and still you can be a logo designer and branding expert?
I feel like sketching is very important. I remember in that course that I did, we actually had a class called life drawing. And we had to like, people would come in and like would sketch them, which was like interesting. Like they'll do different poses. We also like practice sketching our classmates and also like objects and stuff. And that was for like an art, it was sort of an art class, but it was like part of design. Like we learned how to sketch and the importance of that. And I read so many books, like even, you know, people like Aaron Draplin, he talks about like, you know, get on paper. And even in the book, like even the book Still Like an Artist, Austin Kleon, he says he has actually 2 separate desks, one for analog work, one for digital work, right? For the computer, because once you jump on the computer, you're sort of limiting your creative thinking because you start using a mouse and keyboard and you're not having that free-flowing motion with your hand, right? But when you have a paper, a blank slate, a blank piece of paper and a pencil, you have endless possibilities because you can sketch whatever. It can be rough, it can be quick, you can play around, you can mess up, right? You don't have to erase everything. And I feel like, you know, doing logos and branding, learning to sketch your ideas is way faster than going on the computer and starting to mess around with shapes. It's actually better go on sketch heaps of different ideas, and you most likely will land on a good idea. Because you need to get all the junk out of your mind first. When you sit down to work on a project, you got to dump all those bad ideas on the page. And then after you're sketching for a while, then you'll find something that really clicks and hits the mark. So I feel like every designer should learn to sketch. Don't rush things. It's such an important skill. And you don't have to be an artist like Michelangelo or Picasso. Anyone can sketch, man. You know what I mean? So,
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least basic shapes, of course we can. So, I mean, that's such an important message you gave, that you need to be in touch with your traditional sketching as well as, you know, the digital stuff. Because I feel when you directly start on or designing on softwares, you get really overwhelmed, right? Because there are so many tools and the software is sometimes very complex if you see Photoshop or Illustrator. And while when you're sketching, you have just a paper and your sketch pen or pencil, and you can just put down your thoughts.
That's so, it, 100%.
Yeah. So do you believe that digital is taking over whole sketching and, you know, designing stuff? Is it going in good direction, or how you can find a balance between two? Like, do you have to, you know, start every designing process from sketches?
Like, I don't think you have to, because it's just good when you're a beginner and you're junior to medium. I think it's a good place to start sketching. But once you're sort of at a senior level, what tends to happen is that you sort of know what ideas already can work really fast, and you might be faster with the computer. So for me, I'm super fast in Illustrator because I know all my tools and all the features because I've been using it for like, you know, over 8 years, right? So for me, it's really quick for me to just be snappy and make a lot of ideas really fast. But for a person who doesn't really know the tools, like as you said, they get overwhelmed and it just causes lag, or they might, you know, not know how to create ideas really or iterations very fast. So I feel like you just got to create the right habits, and based on the project you're doing, like if it's for a client, is it a personal project? Really sit down and say, like, do I need to think deeply about this, or do I sort of already got ideas in my head subconsciously, or something I've seen work before? Maybe I don't need to sketch. I've already seen something and I can draw on that inspiration and just jump straight in, you know? So you just got to, it depends on the project. But if it's like a bigger, you know, design project for a client, then you got to spend more time, and that requires sketching.
Yeah. Okay. Because the reason, you know, I feel sketching is a great exercise is because in ad industry or in design industry, this phrase is a very cliche that you have to think outside the box. But I believe in that you really don't have to think outside the box, because you have a lot of boxes. Because then there's this client brief, then there are limitations on brand characters or the feel of the brand. So you literally have to be in the box and think outside the box. So that's really tough, you know.
I remember listening to a TEDx talk, and the guy was like, don't think outside the box, make your own box.
Yeah.
So it's like, you just got to flip the script and just, like you can use what works. If there's something already out there that works, just take it, copy it, and then apply your own flavor to it, you know, based on the project. Or, so you just got to find the nice balance.
Yes. So, what's that one thing you need to be a great logo designer? Like, what's that one thing? I know that for any designer, you need to be really good in aesthetic sense, but what's other than that?
The one thing as a logo designer, you need to be able to connect dots. So as a logo designer, to make something distinctive and unique, you need to be able to add meaning to the logo, to the symbol, right? So being able to collect different ideas or categories or concepts or images, and being able to connect the dots and turn that into a shape or a form that's actually unique, distinctive, and that has meaning in it, right? Because obviously, you need aesthetics, it needs to look cool, and logos need to be simple and memorable, right? But a great logo designer is one that can create heaps of meaning and put it into a symbol and make it relevant and connect the dots and communicate that to the client, right? That makes sense. Right. Instead of just doing something random and just like trying to figure out how it all makes sense. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like that is a key thing. And it's basically comes down to critical thinking. You know what I mean? And that's why I always tell designers, like, you need to get inspiration outside the box of design. You need to look elsewhere. You got to look out there instead of just looking at other logos or other designers, because that's going to get you stuck in a rut. So you know what I mean? But that's what I would say when it comes to the one thing. Obviously, there's heaps of other tips. You need to have a keen eye for attention to detail and paying attention to getting in the nitty gritty, but also like being fun and experimenting. Like, sometimes designers just don't experiment enough and play around with typography and customizing stuff. For me, I love customizing, especially when it comes to like typography. I'm always like cutting up shapes, cutting up the letters, and distorting it or whatever, just to make it have that distinctive look.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep exploring and experimenting. So what's your process while researching or referencing stuff or finding inspiration?
Yeah, so first off, I research the competitors. So the market, what's out there, what are their competitors doing, what are their core messages, what does their brand look like, typography, colors, logo. I get a feel for that first, and then that's going to help me differentiate and be more distinctive from that, so they can stand out. Then I look at the history of the company. If it's a company that is already out there, what's their history like? Do they have any heritage to it? Do they have sort of core concepts, or do they have like a family heirloom, or a process they've been a cooking process or something that's relevant to them over the last 100 years, right? If it's a brand new startup, then you just got to look at the market and what's trending in the market, what's relevant, and research that. You can also, sometimes I like talk to the founder and get to know their backstory as well. So that's just a part of the process of researching. But obviously I go on places like Pinterest and Dribble for design research as well, to see like what's out there and maybe gather some ideas from that. But typically, it just depends on the project. But typically I like just researching, going online, and just gathering a whole bunch of different images and research.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Pinterest and many other websites are really amazing. But one thing I feel every designer, faces is that I agree that referencing is one of the key tricks that helps a designer while researching. But how not to get extremely influenced by reference so that your logo does not become too similar or seemed copied?
So what you need to do is actually spend one day gathering references, or a couple days, right? Gather everything into folders or buckets and to different categories, and then spend the whole day looking at different stuff, etc. Then what you want to do is you want to go to sleep, right? Or rest for a couple of days without even looking at the stuff, because that gives your subconscious time to develop the images in your mind and in your brain. So the thing is, what some designers do, they just get references and they chuck it on their artboard, then they put it next to while they're designing. And it's like, okay, of course you're going to copy a lot of the characteristics of the stuff images, because it's on your artboard and you're looking at it while you're designing it. So what I suggest is spend a couple of days just looking at the images, curate the best images that are relevant to the core project. Then on a separate day, then you just focus on design. Don't just look back at the references. Just jump into design. If you need to go back to the references for a little bit, then do that, right? But don't look at it at the same time as designing, because that's going to that's why it's going to influence you. And that's one method I feel like can work to not get too into the copy state.
That's a really smart trick. Even I should try that. I should just keep one day for referencing, and then, because I believe that you have to consume as much as you want to, and then the next day just try to express it in your perspectives, right? And not just like get influence.
That's it.
Yeah,
100%.
That's really amazing tip. Thank you.
That's all right, man.
So coming back to your experience, how has been your experience working for American Express, Telstra, and the Macquarie Business School?
Yeah, so when it comes to the Telstra and American Express, those were projects that I did with an agency in Sydney. It's actually funny because my teacher in university, he ran an agency, and his agency was called Blue Melon, right? And they're on the beach, and he actually hired me for a couple of projects as a freelancer, and he was my teacher. Like, it was funny, like my lecturer. It was so funny.
Oh, you were in that school that time, or you were just graduated?
Like it was after I graduated. He hired me.
Okay.
But when I was in there, he just saw potential in me, and like I was like, he saw that I was a good designer, and then he saw my content and stuff. He's like, "Oh, hey, need help with a project?" Like, they have a small team, but sometimes he needed help. So, for Telstra, it was like an animated, like it was like a video. Like, I had to design like this little like Wi-Fi thing, and I had to add it into a video, and that was cool. And then American Express, I did an illustration. So it was like a vector illustration. They were trying to do an interactive map on their website for this new Visa card they were launching, I think in Singapore or like Australasia. And I got to do like an illustration, which is pretty cool. So obviously, like, I didn't work with the client directly, but it was with the agency. But that's experience, with those companies. With Macquarie Business School, that was last year. They launched something called Flash Mentoring. So they have an alumni of 90,000 students. So we did this social campaign that launched to the 90,000 alumni. Basically, it was mentoring. So I got to do like a whole social media package, come up with a logo. Obviously, I had to follow brand guidelines because it's it's the top 5 universities in top 5 or top 10, I don't know, in Australia. And I got to do like some documents and some icons and a poster design, and that was really fun. That was really cool. So
that's really, really interesting. So since now you are a complete freelancer, right?
Yeah, 100%. Full-time freelancing working from home.
So since you have worked sort of for an agency and freelancing, what would you suggest for a designer, to work in an agency first, then go for freelancing, or vice versa? How should you?
Yeah, I get you. I recommend working in an agency for at least a year or 2, right? Because when I finished college, I did one internship in my college, in my course. I did another one outside my course in 2016. And then I started working in a few agencies for a while, for like a year and a bit. And then I was also freelancing. I already started freelancing in 2013, 2014. So while I was in college, I was already freelancing. So at the same time, but I suggest, work for an agency for a year or 2 in a branding agency, because you want to get experience. And when you're there, ask as many questions as you can, like be the best friends with the creative director, get as much information out of them and knowledge they have, and absorb that knowledge. Secondly, look at their system. So study and look on the computer, look how they deal with their projects, their clients, how they structure their folders, pay attention to how they pitch, all those things. Like, just look at the systems, what programs and software they're using to do certain things, how do they generate leads, and blah, blah, blah. Listen to the sales team if you can. That's what you want to do. You want to extract and learn. So then when you go to freelancing, you know what to do, and you've got some understanding of how things work, right? But if you just jump straight to freelancing, what tends to happen is you have to figure stuff on your own, unless you invest in like a pro group or a mastermind or take a lot of courses, etc. So that's personally what I recommend. But But I love freelancing. I just love the freedom that it brings, that I can choose clients. But obviously, like, it's a lot of hard work. You have to enjoy doing business and doing other stuff apart from design. But for me, yeah, that's what I recommend.
I totally agree with you on that part, that even if you start straight as a freelancer, then making your portfolio is even difficult, because then you have to create fake projects or just mock-ups. And it's better to have a experience, and, because in agency you can work on multiple brands or multiple projects, so which is really good for your portfolio. So how did you get your first client as a freelancer?
So my first client, was actually in college. So I did have another client, but I didn't get paid. It was like for a friend. At the time when I was dating someone, it was her older brother, and he was running a business. And I designed a logo in Photoshop. I didn't know what I was doing, bro. That was like so long ago. That was like in 2012 or 2011. I don't know. It was bad. Anyway, so I think my first proper like paid client was a student. He was a DJ duo. He plays dubstep and stuff, mixes.
Whoa.
And he wanted a logo. Their band was called, their DJ name was called Shots Fired. So I created this logo with a bullet going through the like Shots Fired, and then it had like a waveform, like a music waveform. Yeah. It was pretty cliche, but
wow.
I got paid like
interesting.
Yeah, I got paid like $20, but I was like, why not? First client. So it started off. That was my first client, $20, and then it just grew from there. And then I started like doing bigger projects. I started going on some freelance sites and stuff, and then it went up from like $30, $50, $100, $300, $500, and etc. And
okay, so that was really fun. So for a beginner freelancer, how would you suggest to go forward, with this freelancing industry, just to get up to the freelancing sites, or how should you look for clients?
Yeah, so some people, it works going on freelance sites like 99 Designs, Upwork, Fiverr. Yeah. It works for some people, right? But those people that are at the top, they've been in the industry for a long time. They've built reviews, so they can demand a higher pay. They can get more clients. So the thing is, I recommend don't focus on just going on freelance sites. 100% put your portfolio everywhere and be on as many sites as you can to increase the amount of potential and leads, right? So, but the thing is, it's better to build your personal brand and your online presence, and actually start to like specialize, develop your craft to a point where you're in high demand. Because the way you position yourself in the market, if you position yourself as a premium value, a person of value, that you can't get that anywhere else, because that person has a unique mindset perspective, then people will come to you. You know what I mean? So, because I just find like the freelance sites, the people don't value design, they're low budgets, not all of them, but a lot of the times it's just like toxic and negative. Whereas if I've built real relationships in the real world with it and built my network, I can get better clients that way. Through my content on Instagram and YouTube, I attract clients that way as well. And I feel like it's better in the long term to do it that way instead of just focusing on one platform like Upwork or Fiverr. And secondly, those sites are crowded as well. You know what I mean? Like they're all crowded. Yes. Like some of them you can't even make an account. Like even Upwork, I think ages ago I tried making an account. It's like, oh, we have too many graphic designers or logo designers, whatever. And I was like, this is a waste of time, bro. So, yeah.
You have amazing presence on Instagram, and so of course you believe that Instagram is a great platform to showcase your work. So if someone is looking to find projects from and freelancing clients from Instagram, should you just showcase your work as in your logos, your projects, or should you also be sharing carousels or tips or tutorials?
Yeah, so for me, I think it's best if you show your work. There's a few guys that I love. One account made by James and the other one, Jeroen. I think I said his name. He's from the Netherlands. They just show their logos and they get so many clients and they have over 100K each, right?
Wow.
And all they do is just show their logo designs and their process, and they get a lot of clients. So if you start doing, carousels and teaching, that's totally fine. But you might get people wanting content instead of logos and design. That's what
Yeah.
I've found. That's what
Yes.
I've found in my personal experience. You got to think about those things. But for me personally, being an educator and a teacher in the space, I think it's great to just teach everything you know, share your process, share your work, but also share other things like how you think, how you create ideas, because that's valuable to people. People like seeing how you do things. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you can mix it up, but show your work, but also show your process and teach. But because the thing is, there's better teachers than you out there. So if you can't do better than them, then you're not going to get the attention because they're already doing the same stuff. Do you know what I mean? So why
Yeah.
not focus on your craft and create a unique style and develop that? Because uniqueness is so powerful, and it's going to get more attention than just trying to be like everybody else and stuff like that. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. And when you mention style, every designer, I believe that he or she should have your own style and your own texture to your work. So how do you find one? Like, I know it's just by exploring, but then how do you find that sense that, yes, now I found out my style?
Yeah, I feel like it's all about just constantly creating. Make something every day. Just create. And over the time of creation and consistency, you eventually start loving certain techniques or certain apps that you use a lot. And that will start to form certain ideas when you go to create, or certain, like a certain style or a certain way of doing something. Or a certain Photoshop effect that you love and you just start using it all the time, and then that becomes like your style, right? But it happens over a period of time, like it happens over years of creating,
Right,
and
yeah.
it also depends on your passions. Like some people might like someone might like Japanese culture, they might love that, and maybe they like Japanese typography, so maybe they put like cool images or very experimental stuff. Another person might be into like 80s. There's a guy called James White. He creates like 80s styles designs, and he uses Illustrator to make the shapes. Then he drops in Photoshop and starts adding grain textures and like cool overlay lighting and lens flares. And he's known for that style because that's all he creates. It's consistent, right? So consistently creating a certain methodology or a certain way, that's how you develop your style. And then once you start to like look at your work, back at your past work and your current work, you'll start to see a pattern on your Instagram grid, or you'll start to see patterns in your client work, and that's when you can like start to see, I have a style, and people will tell you like, I love your style, and that will validate it as well, like, you do this thing really well. So
Yeah, it's a overtime process. It's not a one-time thing. So could you please share with us some of your projects that really made you think deep and push yourself in this field?
It's a tricky one because there's like so many different projects that I've done over like a period of time.
Okay.
What one that I really thought was really fun and interesting was the Craft Whiskey Society. So this guy was launching a subscription service. He was one of my clients in like 2019. He was launching a subscription service for a box where they send out different whiskeys samples every month, and it's like they drop it off and whatever. And I never done like something for like food and beverage or like a whiskey brand. So I was like, man, what do I do? So I started looking up like different designs of like Italian beer and different like labels on of Scotch whiskey and like all these interesting stuff. And there's a lot of cool designs out there, and I really had to think of like how I could create it. The client wanted a badge design, so I had to come up like, how can I fit all this text and a tagline in this badge shape? So it was like I really had to play around a lot with different shapes, get some ideas, and really make it like unique. And the cool thing is that I customized the letter of the W and put a Glen Kahn whiskey glass in it in the negative space.
Wow. Yeah.
And what I did is the book Logo Lounge 12, I sent that logo in for basically last year's version, which is the number 12. And that logo actually won the competition out of like 43,000 people. So it got featured in the book, which was like my first time ever. But it was just an amazing. It was just amazing. I think that was a great project, and it was also like a win-win for me because I got that accolade, and I think that was one of the best ones for me.
Wow,
cool.
wow, that's really amazing. I mean, competing with 43,000 people, that's insane.
Yeah, I'm so thankful and grateful for that.
So, in such projects, you come to a stage where you have creativity blockage, right? You just can't think anything. So how do you overcome, such blocks? What's your trick?
For me, I don't really believe in creative block. I think it's just an illusion that people make up. The thing is, people just don't consume enough. They're not consuming gold. They're consuming dirt, right? So filter your channels. Where are you getting your knowledge from, right? Secondly, once again, stop looking in design. Look at architecture. Look at music. Watch movies. Get into science. Get into nature. Like, there's so much stuff out there, and you can draw inspiration from all those places. So once you start to learn to curate from a whole bunch of places, you will never run out of ideas because there's always stuff there. And for me personally, I always like screenshot stuff and take pictures. And on my computer, I have so many folders over the years of like different inspiration things. So I can always go back into the treasure chest and pull out stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to like ultimately help me tap into different ideas so I don't get into any form of like block or whatever you want to call it. So that's one way that I don't experience that. Other things you can do is just like, have a collaboration session with a friend, like jump on a call and have a chat, or like, or join a mastermind group to get some other people's thoughts and opinions, because, sometimes that helps, or think of like add different keywords and try and do mind mapping or connect the dots, because that can spark different ideas as well. Remember, everything starts with words. If you can explore words paint pictures. So it's like you got to extract, and build a word list to extract certain elements and keep diving deeper and deeper. But that's sort of some ways that I sort of deal with that. But I always have ideas. I believe you just got to tap in. You got to tap into the creative being within. Everyone is spiritual within. You can tap into the endless supply, right? You just got to be open to it, and you got to, think beyond the natural. One more thing as well that I just got reminded of is that the whole thing about like the subconscious again. You need to like have play, like you need to have fun. So if you're always in the state of work, sometimes your mind and your brain goes into this state of stress, and under stress, your brain doesn't wander as much. Or if your brain is in danger or feels like financial pressure or other pressures, it starts going into like safe mode, right? So sometimes it's good just to like go and have fun, like go play a game or go bowling or go play golf or go to the beach. Like do something totally that like that's not working. And a lot of the times ideas will just flow better and pop up in your head. Even in the shower, you know how in the shower sometimes ideas happen?
Yeah, it's the most productive thing.
Exactly. So it totally works. And I remember one of my creative directors used to say, I think it was from Ogilvy, the advertising agency back in the day. They used to have a pinball machine, and they were just like, the guy wouldn't even work. He would just play pinball and go get coffee and walk around the streets. And then he would like get a magical idea and be like, I got it. He'll get like the light bulb effect. And then they'll go back into the studio and they'll come up with an amazing advertising campaign. So it works. It works.
Yes, when you're not thinking about something, that's the time when you get the best ideas. And this insight was so inspiring and motivating, trust me, because I believe that everything you see in this world is designed, right? And you
Mhm.
can't be just technical and stuff and find inspirations on Pinterest, but in any field, if you are too observant, you can find your design inspiration.
Mm,
So yeah,
that's right.
this was really helpful, getting straight into some technical logo designing,
Mm,
questions.
sure.
So what makes a logo great and iconic? Like, what's the key?
So, what is the key? I
Yeah.
think a logo should have three core elements. It should be simple, it should be memorable, it should be distinctive, and it should be timeless. And
Wow. Yeah.
and number five is, it could be balance or whatever. Like those are sort of the top five things that you need to make a logo really iconic and stand out. Another person you should follow to get ideas is Sagi Haviv, and he's
Yes.
designed like National Geographic, um, you know, all those big brands, and they create simple logos like a circle and a line, for I think it was the National Observatory or Reserve, Animal Park or whatever. He created literally like just a circle and a line, but he put meaning into it. He put,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, like we want people to be able to look at the symbol and be able to remember it within like 2 seconds. And if they can redraw it on a piece of paper, that shows that image stuck in their mind. That's why we can think of McDonald's. We think of the big yellow M arches that sticks in our
Yes.
mind. We think of KFC. We think of like the old illustrated face of Colonel.
Yes. Yes.
So those core elements, timelessness, distinctiveness, memorability, scalability, simplicity, all those things need to be applied to the logo to make it really strong and powerful. And obviously, each logo is going to be different. It's not always going to be a logo mark. Sometimes you might have a badge. Sometimes you might have a type mark where it's just, a font, a customized font. Sometimes it's going to be more creative. And yeah, you just got to really just have fun with it. But it's always going to be stuck to those core principles. If you approach every design with those in mind, then you're going to come out with a better result every time when it comes to a logo design.
Yeah, this was really insightful. And one thing I also faced while designing, and even many of my colleagues faces, is that when you're designing a very minimal and simplistic logo, and yet it shouldn't be generic, because when you mention McDonald's and many other minimal logos, but then you really face this challenge where it shouldn't look very generic, because there are a lot of simplistic logos out there, and somewhere it's gonna be similar to it.
Yeah, of course. There's always going to be similarities and stuff, right? Like there's nothing new under the sun. Like there's a book called Logo Modern. There's a book called Logo Modernism on my shelf. If you look in there's so many logos and shapes, but like there's stuff already been done years ago. But it's just like, how can you make it a bit more fresh? How can you make it relevant to the companies that are alive now? Because not all companies stick around forever.
Yeah.
So you just got to make it relevant to the times,
Okay. And one of the key you mentioned was the logo should be timeless, right? The designing industry is so dynamic, I feel, because many of the brands are rebranding their logos now and making it more flat, making it more slim. So how can you create a logo which is timeless? Because then, if we consider that design industry is so dynamic.
Yeah, good point. Like that's the thing. Everything is dynamic, and everything is like like that. So how can we make it more timeless? Well, the way you design, like obviously we can use techniques and blending modes and overlays and gradients and stuff, but at the end of the day, if a logo works in black and white and it's like so simple to the point you've reduced it down to the most simplest form you can, that shows it's going to be timeless, because you've explored every approach to it. You've gone down every pathway, and it's led you down to this most simplest form into a simple shape, right? Then that's when you know it's going to be timeless because they're not going to have to update it.
That can be one of the exercises while designing logo, is that you just check if your logo is self-standing in black and white. I mean, that's amazing insight.
Yeah, 100%. And you can always like do things like flip the logo around, to get to see the negative space and stuff. But yeah, usually just try and make it flat and modern and simple. And you can see these days, like everything is becoming more simplistic and flat, just a flat brand color. And it just works. It works for a longer period of time,
Yeah. So coming to some really critical client questions where all the designer faces. So how do you proceed when the client is not clear what he or she wants, and being an expert, you have to do the part. So when the brief is not clear, how do you proceed with it?
Yeah, so you need to have a solid process as a designer, a process that you don't mess with. You apply it every single time you have a client. If the client doesn't really know what they need, you need to have a discovery session. With the discovery session, you need to extract every bit of information that you need, and once you do that, then you form a brief. You need to customize the brief and simplify it. Right. So you make the creative brief, and then based on that, then you go into a process of, research, and then like stylescapes. I love stylescapes because what it does is basically, it's similar to a mood board. Basically, you create like, 3-4 mood boards, and you present each direction. Each direction is different, right? You can have mild, medium, and spicy, right? I learned this from Christo. And when you focus on being more objective and focus on the users, right? And you reiterate that to the client, it's just it's going to be a lot better in terms of like the communication. And then once you decide on the stylescape, it's you know what direction you want to go. So you as a designer are guiding the client through the process. There's a bit of collaboration in the process, but those are the things that I do to help me guide the client, recommend things, and actually design based on the users, the goals, the objectives. By starting off with the discovery session, creative brief, and then focusing on the goals and all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And then what would be a perfect client brief?
So a perfect client brief has the core goal or objective, right? Something that's a success metric. What is the measure of success, right? So is it the goal to get 50% increase in revenue over 3 months? Or is it to get 400 clicks on the landing page? Or is it to get 100 downloads on the ebook? Like, you need to have a measure of success. So after 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, that if you hit this metric, that we know that the branding is a success, right? So the core objective and goal, you need to also know the user. So who is a specific person, the profile of the person that we are targeting. You need to also ask if there's any creative parameters or considerations. So does the client have to avoid a certain color because of competitors? Do they have to stick with the color because of heritage? Do they have to use a certain font because that's like part of the brand guidelines? You need to have those creative considerations in there.
Yeah.
Then you need to have like the timeline, any other specific, notes or things. But those are like the main things when it comes to a creative brief. And like, that's just a simple version of a creative brief. But yeah, just understanding the business and the goals is the main thing.
Got it. So this gonna be really helpful for all designing buddy designers. So since I have to ask you this question, because I was watching this video of Chris do with some guest, I can't recall his name, and he said that logo is an identity but not a communication. Like, it's not full communication. What's your opinion on that? Because you're also into branding, right? And I believe
Yeah.
that a logo can't just stand alone. Yeah, I agree. And then even the branding and marketing builds up to whole, communication part.
Mhm.
So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so that was said by Sagi Haviv. So the guy I
Oh,
mentioned
yes,
before.
yes. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he says, a logo is identification, not communication. I agree with him because on an average day, we're bombarded with like over 6,000 messages subconsciously and consciously. Because when you drive on the road, you see ads everywhere, like ads and logos everywhere, right? So it's like, how's your brain processing all that at once? So, once again, that's why we say logos should be memorable, because they have to be like distinct and simple to pick up within a second. Like a little kid has to be able to see it, like, oh, look, it's Macca's. Oh, it's that. My favorite, toy shop or whatever. So I truly believe like you can put meaning into the symbol, 100%. You can put ideas, but on a conscious level, the public doesn't care about the meaning behind the logo or anything. Only designers care about that stuff. People in the real world, they just glance at the logo like, oh, cool. Yeah, I can see it. That's that business. And then they attach their personal belief systems and perceptions of that brand, right? Based on their own beliefs. So a logo is literally just for identification. I totally agree with that. And I think it all makes sense to me. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the primary objective of any logo, I feel, is the recall value. And then it comes, the branding and the meaning part. So yeah, I believe so. Yes, it's an identity.
Cool.
Because then beautifully when you mention that, we are bombarded with so many things. But when we see that a logo which has a high recall value, which is McDonald's or Audi or BMW, it's on the subconscious level. In marketing, we have this term of top of the mind. So you have like 500 logos. What are those 10 logos when I ask you name 10 logos? So yeah, you have to be on the top of the mind. And yes,
that's right. You got to be fast to be able to be recognized. So
yes, 100%. So see, a lot of our audience are freelancers, okay? And I'm sure they will have this question, which is, how should one charge for their branding or logo designing services?
So you need to develop a package.
Okay.
Always do things in packages. Don't just do one logo with one file, one EPS, whatever. Like you need to develop a package that's going to add value to the business, because realistically, guys, a logo by itself is not going to help a brand or a business. Like it's not going to generate revenue for them. It's going to develop trust, which leads to revenue, right? It might make them look professional, but you need to add on things. You need to have a style guide. You need to have marketing promotion materials, like maybe a website if they need it. Do they need a brochure? Do they need, business cards? There's all these other things you got to think about. And you don't just add random stuff. You got to pick stuff that's relevant to that client, So if their marketing tactic is all about reaching out to trade shows, then they're going to need banners, stand-up banners for their trade show, setup. And they might need like a little flyers or something, that's relevant to the situation. So that's why you need to dig deep in the discovery session to understand what is the business, what do they need, how are they going to approach, how are they going to generate income and generate clients, but back to the packages things, typically I offer a few packages. One is more like just the general package. I'll include a whole logo suite in it. So I don't hold back any files. I give them all the files, Illustrator, EPS, PNGs, PDFs for printing and CMYK, sometimes PMS if there's Pantones involved. And then include a style guide. Usually I include like Instagram grid in some Instagram, posts, business card, typically like a banners for like social media. So we do a whole social media graphics as well, because you got to think about display pictures and banners and like for Facebook or LinkedIn, whatever. Like there's so many places where you can design stuff. So I try and include it all in a package. So then when you have a price, it doesn't look as bad because you're offering so much value. You're adding extra things in there, which does increase the price, but also increases the value, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then you can offer like a higher tier package where it includes all the bells and whistles. So like a whole, full identity. And obviously with the logo, include typography and colors as well. But yeah, try and expand it and try and dig deeper so they can create a full identity instead of like just a logo by itself. But yeah, typically that's how I approach it. And just make sure it's like you listen to the customer and you're offering things that that's actually going to be helpful, not just because you want to make money as a designer.
Right. Yeah. That totally makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, that's so true, that the application of logo is so wide that it's not just limited and it can stand alone. Yeah, and you have to package stuff, and that gives me this question: that how should you design a logo in a way it can be adapted and branded wherever you want, whether it's on packaging or merchandising or just a favcon, that small. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I do is I do multiple variations of the logos and I give it to the client. So I don't just create one version; I create multiple versions.
Okay.
I don't create like 50. I create maybe like 4 or 5 different versions of the logo so that it's scalable. So I'll create a favicon. I'll create a badge version. Maybe they can make a sticker out of it later on, or I make like a horizontal version, a vertical version, a stacked version. So on a website, they can use the long version. On a display picture, they can use the stacked version. So it fits within this little circle, the little square. You don't just want to have the same logo applied everywhere. You need to make different versions. So that's why having an understanding of every social media platform, understanding like, favicons and all those things, and do multiple variations. Don't be slack. Just explore and create a few more extra logos. And the client is going to love you for it because it's like, oh, that's really cool. And if they don't use it, it's fine. They don't have to use it. You just make suggestions, but and you tell them this can be used for the website, this can be used social media, etc. But yeah, that's what I do.
Okay, got it. So we come to our end part, and I have last 2 questions for you. Cool. And one which is my friend was actually asking me. Many a times, client are not well versed what design industry shifts are and trends are, and they give you the brief and you create something really good, but then a client completely rejects it. So just to give you an example and put things in perspective, if Jobs created the Apple logo, right, and that time the logo was so simple and minimal. What if Steve Jobs said that, no, we want something 3D and lots of drop shadows and all? But as a designer, you have to preserve your design because this has a lot of potential in it and it can be a iconic design or logo. So how do you preserve your design when you know that it has a lot of potential, even if client is asking something completely different?
So if you're the designer that's still working on the brand and then your client wants to change it up, you need to get alignment with them. So you need to go back to understanding who is the user, and then you need to ask the right questions, like business questions, like, is this really going to benefit the brand? Because remember, a logo has developed brand equity. If there's so much equity attached to the logo, to change it is going to damage the brand. For example, if you look at Gap has that iconic, it's a fashion brand. Basically, it had an iconic, it was like a cool font. It was a serif font. It was, And then what they did, they changed it to some random, they had like a little shape with a gradient and they made it lowercase when it was uppercase before. And then everyone was like, what the heck is going on? Like it just and then they changed it back to the old logo because it was causing more negativity than positivity. It was damaging the brand equity because it's built up so long. So you need to get alignment with the client. You need to communicate and really say like offer your advice. You're the expert, right? So tell them like, this is not the right direction, or this is not going to be valuable for the brand. Does that answer the question? Or
Yes, it does. Also answers the rebranding question, where most of the rebranding design are not failures, but not completely a success, because then while rebranding, you completely sometimes loses your character and design and the whole branding stuff. So yeah, it's really important when you said you have to be totally aligned and you have to make your client understand like how it's going to affect your brand equity. Yes.
Yeah. And I'll add to that. It's like, you got to remember that there's business people and there's creative people. So in the real world, like there's some people in suits that don't understand design. That it's like, oh, let's just change this or change that. But they don't do it with purpose. All right. They just do it out of whatever emotional reason, but they don't think about the business and the brand and all that and the customers. So you as the expert that understands design but understands psychology and business, because designers should learn those things, then you'd be like, then you make the suggestions. You'd be like, this is the direction we should be taking moving forward. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's inevitable. There's going to be such people, Yeah.
Yeah, bro.
So my last question is, do you think AI and some online softwares which are, coming, which will automatically create a basic logo for you, will this be a threat in the coming future to designers?
I'm literally launching a video this week on YouTube about that topic,
okay.
Which is funny. But my opinion on it is, like, I don't like them. I think they're stupid because it's like there's so much talent and creative people out there, that have ideas and can create something for you. I don't know why people want to go the cheap route and just go for something generated by AI, because a lot of the times it's not going to be relevant to the brand. It's just random shapes put together. Do you know what I mean? There's no purpose or thinking behind it. So to be honest, I don't think it's a threat, because people are reluctant of AI. Mm-hmm. Because remember, a robot can't think like a human. It doesn't have the capacity of a human mind and brain, right? We have so much power within us. Like there's 16 trillion cells in our body, 16 trillion every day moving and creating stuff, bro. Like, so God made us with this amazing mind and body to think of ideas. So we're more powerful than AI, right?
That's unbeatable.
However, it's unbeatable, right? So to see it as a threat, I don't really see it as a threat, but it just encourages me to actually do better, create better, be better. You know what I mean? As a designer, like, how can I add more value? How can I upgrade my skill set? You know what I mean? How can I position myself as a premium investment, not a expense? You know what I mean?
Yes,
so that's what I'm focused on. Instead of focusing on AI, I'm focused on that, building myself up, creating more value in my business and my skill set. Instead of just whinging and crying, oh, AI, just, get over yourself and put in the hard work, build your brand, build your freelancing, build your portfolio up, and don't focus on AI. But look, it's inevitable. Technology is going to get better. AI is going to get better. There's so many apps coming out. Even Adobe launched an app in the past week. It's called Substance 3D Designer. So now you can design 3D stages and environments now with Adobe, but it's extra money. It's outside the Creative Cloud. So it's interesting where it's going. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on that.
Wow, that's really beautifully said. Yeah, I mean, yes, you don't have to be scared, actually. Yeah, because the AI won't be that good that it can really think in the magnitude that humans think. So yes, we don't have to be scared.
Amazing, bro.
So this was, Jeremy, this was really amazing, full of energy, and thank you so much for coming here and sharing your insights and knowledge. It's going to be really helpful.
No worries. Thank you so much, man. Thanks for having me on. And I'm glad that the people listening, and I hope they receive something out of it and get that knowledge to grow their business and expand their freelancing.
Certainly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man.
And that's it for this episode. It was an amazing discussion that opened so many perspectives about design process and creative blocks of a designer. It was also interesting to know how AI is not really a threat to design community. I hope this episode helps you to make better designs and pumps your imagination. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have liked today's discussion with Jeremy, do comment your thoughts and rate us on the Apple podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to Sculpted, the design podcast on Epilogue website or wherever you get your podcasts from, so that you get notified about our upcoming episodes. I shall catch up with you on our next episode. Until then, take care and keep designing.